A young nurse saved a little girl from wolf attack in the forest. Unaware her dad is a billionaire, he shockingly changed her life. It was a cold season in winter when Nurse Kate got into the woods to fetch firewood for her grandpa. The forest lay silent under a thin blanket of snow, branches creaking in the icy wind. There was no sun that day, just a pale, gray sky stretching endlessly above the bare trees. The world was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that brings peace. It was the kind that pressed on your chest, that hinted something was waiting just beyond sight. Bundled tightly in her thick coat, scarf wrapped around her neck and tucked beneath her chin, Kate carried an axe in one gloved hand and a canvas sack slung over her shoulder. She wasn't afraid of the woods. She had grown up around them, played in them as a girl, walked them through every season. Now, she came for practicality. Her aging grandfather, whose breathing had become wheezy in the cold months, needed the fireplace burning all day. Wood didn't fetch itself. Her boots crunched softly over the frozen earth, muffled by patches of snow. The smell of pine lingered faintly in the air, mixed with the dry, earthy scent of winter bark. She hummed to herself, a low, tuneless sound, half to keep herself company, half to drown out the groaning limbs above. Birds had long flown south, and the usual forest chatter was replaced with wind, groaning wood, and her own breath. Unbeknownst to Kate, on the other side of the forest, 10-year-old Mia had slipped out of her back door, chasing a white rabbit she'd seen from the kitchen window. It had hopped along the snowbank near the garden fence, pausing just long enough to catch her eye before darting into the woods. Mia, wide-eyed and curious, had watched it bounce once, twice, then disappear between the trees. She had never seen a rabbit that color pure white, almost glowing against the snow. Maybe it was magic, she thought. Her parents were asleep on the couch, bundled beneath a blanket, heads leaning together in a rare moment of peace. Mia didn't mean to leave them behind. She just wanted a closer look. So she pulled on her puffy red coat, tugged her boots over her slippers, and quietly turned the doorknob. The rabbit moved just slowly enough to keep her following. First past the fence, then a few steps into the woods, then a few more. Before she realized it, the house had disappeared behind the curtain of trees, and all that surrounded her was snow, silence, and bark. Back deeper in the forest, Kate chopped at a thick, fallen limb, her axe thudding with rhythmic cracks. Chips flew. Steam curled from her lips with each breath. She wiped her brow with her glove, then reached down to scoop the splitwood into her sack. She had enough for now, maybe just one more bundle. Then she heard it. A scream. Sharp. High. Far. It sliced through the forest like a blade. Her entire body stiffened, heart thudding hard against her ribs. She turned her head toward the sound, straining to hear again. Another scream, fainter this time, almost lost in the wind. A child. Kate didn't think. She dropped the sack, let the axe fall, and bolted toward the sound. Branches slapped against her arms. Snow kicked up underfoot. She ran blind, her ears leading her more than her eyes. Another scream closer this time. Kate's breath tore through her throat, a mix of fear and adrenaline pushing her forward. Then suddenly she saw them. Near a curve in a narrow trail, the trees opened to reveal a horrific sight. A young girl, no older than 10, trembling in place, her back pressed against a rock. Her eyes were wide with terror, her mouth barely able to make sound anymore. 10 feet from her stood a wolf. Large. Gray. Its fur bristled, its breath curling in smoky clouds. It growled low, head lowered, teeth bared. It took a step closer, ready to strike. Time froze. Kate didn't pause. Her eyes scanned the ground there. A thick, jagged branch, heavy enough to use as a weapon. She grabbed it in both hands and shouted with everything in her. Hey. The wolf jerked its head around, startled by the new voice. It growled louder, its attention now split. Kate charged. She didn't feel the cold anymore. Her fear burned away, replaced by instinct and fire. The wolf lunged. Kate swung. The branch connected with a sickening crack against its shoulder. The beast stumbled, howled, and skidded back. Kate positioned herself in front of the girl, raising the branch again. Get back, she shouted. The wolf snarled, but hesitated. It stared at Kate, then back at the child. Something changed in its posture. Maybe it realized this wasn't prey anymore. Maybe it knew the fight would cost too much. Whatever the reason, it turned. Without another sound, it backed into the shadows and disappeared between the trees. The silence that followed was deafening. Kate stood shaking, the branch still in her hands, her breath heaving. Then she dropped it and turned to the girl. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling down. "It's okay. You're safe now." The child burst into tears. Kate pulled off her coat and wrapped it around her. She was tiny and freezing, her cheeks red, her hands trembling. She clung to Kate's waist with everything she had. "What's your name?" Kate asked, brushing the girl's hair from her face. "I'm Mia," the girl hiccuped. "You're going to be okay, Mia. I've got you." She lifted her into her arms. The cold hit her immediately, her sweater thin and damp, but she didn't stop. Kate turned back through the forest, this time walking with purpose, eyes sharp and ears alert. After what felt like hours, a distant voice called out, "Kate? Kate!" It was a park ranger. She recognized his green jacket and flashlight beam. Relief washed over her as she stumbled into view. "She's hurt," Kate called out. He rushed forward, eyes wide. "We've been looking for her. Her parents called it in. She's been missing for an hour." "She was almost eaten," Kate said, her voice cracking. "A wolf." The ranger took Mia gently from her arms and radioed for an ambulance. Kate followed behind, numb, dazed, still hearing the growl in her ears. They made it to the road. The ambulance arrived minutes later, whisking Mia away to the local hospital. Her vitals were stable, just some scrapes and early signs of hypothermia. Nothing permanent. Kate stood outside the hospital for nearly an hour, arms crossed, still wrapped in shock. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to make sure the girl was safe. Inside, Mia clung to her parents and told them everything. About the rabbit, about the trees, about the monster, and about the woman who came like a guardian from nowhere and saved her. The doctors asked Kate to come inside. The parents wanted to see her. When she entered the room, the mother ran to her, tears falling freely. "You saved my baby," she cried. "I don't know how to thank you. Oh God, what if you hadn't been there?" Kate just smiled weakly. "She was brave," she said, looking at Mia. "Really brave." The girl reached out for her and hugged her again. For a moment, no one spoke. Outside the hospital room, snow continued to fall. But in that room, where the warmth of gratitude wrapped around a quiet nurse who never asked to be a hero, something bigger had begun. This was only the beginning. Weeks had passed since that unforgettable day in the woods. Snow still blanketed the small town like a soft white quilt. The trees remained bare, their bony limbs stretching skyward, and the cold still nipped at the skin the moment one stepped outside. But for Kate, the winter felt different now, heavier in some ways, quieter in others. Life had returned to its routine, yet something inside her had changed. She was back to her shifts at the clinic, where patients lined up every day with coughs, sprains, and stories. She moved with the same grace, treated each person with the same compassion. But when someone said, "You're the nurse from the news, right?" she would simply nod and deflect. She hadn't saved the girl for attention. She did it because someone had to. At home, her grandfather, his lungs fragile and rattling in the cold, watched her with quiet pride. He didn't speak much of what had happened, only nodded solemnly when the story came up on television or in a neighbor's passing remark. But every evening, he'd place an extra log on the fire, gesture to the armchair across from him, and say, "Sit. You've done enough for today." Kate never disagreed. The memory of Mia's eyes still lingered with her, wide, terrified, yet full of trust. And the wolf, its snarl, its weight, its retreat. Some nights, the moment replayed behind her eyelids before she drifted into sleep. Then, one morning, everything changed again. She had just returned from the market, her arms filled with groceries, when she saw the letter. It wasn't in the mailbox. It was tucked under the door, slid just far enough inside to be noticed. The envelope was thick, off-white, with gold embossing at the corners. No stamp, no return address. Just her name, in elegant script, Miss Kate Dawson. She frowned. It wasn't the kind of envelope you received from a friend or a utility company. This was the kind used for wedding invitations or gala events. Things far outside her world. She set down the groceries and opened it. Inside was a single, folded letter on heavy, cream-colored stationery. "Dear Miss Dawson, we hope this finds you well. Not a day has passed without our hearts returning to that moment in the forest and the unimaginable courage you showed. You not only saved our daughter's life, you restored ours. We would be honored if you would join us for a private dinner at our residence this Friday evening. No obligations, no formalities. Just a quiet night to express what words never could. Sincerely, Clara and Jonathan Wells. Beneath the signature was a neatly handwritten address. Kate read it twice. Wells. She remembered the name from the hospital registry. And the estate address. Yes, she'd heard of it. The Wells family was among the wealthiest in the region, known for their philanthropic work, their foundation, their spotless reputation. For a moment, she stood frozen in her doorway, the envelope trembling slightly in her hand. Part of her wanted to ignore it. She wasn't comfortable with fancy things. What would she even wear? What would she say? That evening, she placed the envelope on the table as she cooked for her grandfather. He eyed it curiously, but said nothing until dinner was done. "You're quiet," he said, spooning stew into his bowl. More than usual. Kate hesitated, then handed him the letter. He read it slowly. When he finished, he folded it neatly and set it back down. "You're going," he said. "I don't know." "Yes, you do," he said, pointing his spoon at her. "They want to thank you. Let them. I don't want anything from them. Maybe they just want to feed you." Kate laughed, more out of nerves than amusement. "It's probably a 10-course meal I can't pronounce." Her grandfather leaned back in his chair, then asked for bread and jam. "You're not going for the food." She looked away, unsure. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the greatest gift we can give someone is letting them thank us. Otherwise, it haunts them." She stared at the fire for a long time that night. When Friday came, she wore her nicest dress, a dark green wool one she had used only once at a Christmas service. Her boots were polished, and she pulled her long hair back into a braid. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, just not embarrass herself. A black car arrived promptly at 6. The driver, polite and soft-spoken, opened the door and offered her a warm smile. "Miss Dawson," he said. "Right this way." As the car pulled away from the snow-dusted streets and wound toward the hills, Kate's nerves began to tangle. She watched houses give way to estates, lights twinkling on distant lawns. Then, beyond an iron gate, the Wells mansion came into view. It wasn't a house. It was a world of its own. Ivy-covered stone walls, lanterns glowing at every corner, and a grand entrance with double doors that seemed to breathe history and elegance. The doors opened before she knocked. Clara Wells stood in the doorway in a velvet dress, her eyes immediately lighting up at the sight of Kate. "You came," she whispered. Before Kate could answer, she was pulled into a warm embrace. Jonathan Wells appeared behind her, tall and reserved, his eyes glistening. "Welcome, Kate. Please, come in." The inside of the estate was as tasteful as it was grand. Not flashy, elegant. Art lined the walls, a gentle fire crackled in a nearby sitting room, and soft piano music floated in the background. Yet, somehow, it didn't feel cold. It felt lived in, warm. Dinner was served in a private room with a single long table lit by golden candlelight. There were no servants in the room, no photographers, no pretense. Just the Wells family and one very humble nurse. They talked over roasted vegetables and herbed lamb, fresh bread, and sparkling cider. Kate was shy at first, but Clara's kindness made her ease into the conversation. "We've hardly slept," Clara said gently, slicing her vegetables. "Ever since that day, every night, I see her in that forest, and I think, what if you hadn't been there?" Kate shook her head. "I didn't do anything special. I just heard her scream and ran." Jonathan leaned forward, his voice quiet. "You ran toward a wolf." "That's not normal, Kate. That's heroic." Kate blushed and looked down at her plate. "I wasn't trying to be heroic," she mumbled. "I just couldn't ignore it." "You didn't just hear a child," Clara said. "You heard our child, and you gave her back to us." There was a pause. The room settled into a soft silence. Then Jonathan reached beneath the table and brought out a small, flat envelope. He placed it gently in front of her. Kate stared at it. Clara spoke softly. "This isn't charity. This isn't payment. This is what came from our hearts." Kate hesitated, then slowly opened the flap. Inside was a check. Her breath caught. $10 million. She looked up at them, eyes wide, lips parted, but no words came out. Her voice cracked. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Jonathan said. "You saved our world." "This isn't just for Mia," Clara added. "This is for you. For your heart. For your courage. For the kind of person the world needs more of." Tears brimmed in Kate's eyes. She shook her head slowly, overwhelmed. "This is too much. It's not enough," Clara said gently. "But it's something. Please, Let us thank you. Kate looked at the paper again. At the number. At the names. At her own, written in the payee line as though it belonged there. But it didn't feel like a transaction. It felt like love. She tucked the envelope back into her lap, still stunned. Thank you, she whispered. Clara reached across the table and took her hand. No, Kate. Thank you. The fire crackled softly as dinner resumed, but something had shifted in the air. A bond had been forged, not just of gratitude, but of something deeper. Mutual respect, shared humanity, a reminder that in the darkest moment, someone chose to act. And because of that, a child lived. A family remained whole. And a life, Kate's, was about to be transformed in ways she hadn't yet imagined. That night, as she stepped back into the black car, snow swirling beneath the headlights, Kate clutched the envelope close. Not for the money, but for what it meant. Some gifts are made of gold. Others are made of gratitude. And some change everything. The spring thaw came slowly that year. It was as if the earth itself had held its breath through a long winter. One that had been harsh not just in weather, but in the quiet struggles of the people who lived in the small, remote town nestled at the edge of the forest. But as snow melted into streams and green returned to the branches, something else began to bloom as well. Hope. And at the center of that hope stood Kate Dawson. Months had passed since that unforgettable dinner at the Wells estate. Since the moment she sat in stunned silence, a check for $10 million resting in her lap. And though the zeros had blurred behind her tears, the intention behind them had been crystal clear. Gratitude, not charity. Love, not debt. She had barely spoken a word on the drive home that night. She clutched the envelope close to her chest, the weight of it far heavier than mere paper. It wasn't just money. It was possibility. And what she did with it would matter, deeply. Her grandfather had met her at the door, eyes tired, robe hanging from his thin frame. He took one look at her face and knew something was different. She sat beside him on the couch, stared into the fire, and whispered, "They gave me $10 million. He blinked. 10 million. Kate nodded. There was a long silence. Then, with that same dry wit he always kept handy, her grandfather said, "You could finally fix that creaky back door." She laughed, a breathless, emotional sound. And so, the first thing she did was renovate the old house. Not for luxury, but for comfort. She replaced the broken tiles in the kitchen, updated the roof that leaked every time it rained, and built a proper heating system so her grandfather wouldn't shiver through the cold anymore. She didn't hire designers or decorators. She worked with local contractors, insisted they use local materials, and she made it clear, this house isn't changing. It's just healing. But the house was only the beginning. Kate had always known what she wanted to do if she ever had the means. This was her chance to make something lasting. Within weeks, plans began to stir across town. An old, unused brick building on the edge of the main road had long sat in disrepair, a crumbling relic from another time. It had once been a grain mill. Later, a carpenter's workshop. But now, with boarded-up windows and a collapsing roof, it seemed destined for demolition. Kate saw a clinic. A free, full-service rural health clinic. For people like her neighbors, her grandfather, the families who lived too far from hospitals and couldn't afford private care. She envisioned a place where children could get their vaccines without fear, where elderly folks could have their blood pressure checked, where no one was ever turned away for not having insurance. When she announced the project at a town hall meeting, the room fell into stunned silence. Kate Dawson, quiet, tireless nurse, local girl with a gentle voice, was going to fund it herself. Why? Someone had asked, not cruelly, but genuinely. Kate had answered, because I can. And because Mia lived. That little girl's scream in the woods had altered the course of everything. Construction began within weeks. She worked closely with architects, hired skilled laborers from nearby towns, and brought in a project manager who shared her values. No waste, no overcharging, no cutting corners. She insisted on solar panels, accessible entryways, and a waiting room filled with books and warm light. Every morning, she showed up with coffee for the crew. Every evening, she walked through the dusty halls, imagining the sounds of children laughing, a heartbeat monitor beeping, a doctor's gentle reassurance. The sign went up in June. The Dawson Wells Community Clinic. She hadn't wanted her name on it, but Clara Wells had gently insisted. People should know where this came from, she'd said. Mia will grow up learning your name. Kate relented, only on the condition that Wells be included too. Because it wasn't just one act that had built this place. It was a circle of kindness, closing in around a tragedy, turning it into triumph. When the clinic finally opened in mid-July, the whole town came. Some brought flowers. Others brought baked goods or hand-knitted gifts. The mayor gave a short speech. Children played outside under the fluttering ribbon, which Kate's grandfather helped her cut. It wasn't a ceremony of glitz and glamour. It was humble, honest, just like Kate. Inside, the clinic gleamed. A fully stocked pharmacy, exam rooms with new equipment, a modest lab, a counseling office, even a small play area for children. Kate had hired 3 nurses, a part-time doctor, and a receptionist who treated every patient like family. But Kate still worked her own shifts. She still checked vitals, cleaned scrapes, held hands during flu shots. She never let her name, or her bank account, separate her from the people she loved. Over time, the story spread. People came not just from the town, but from villages miles away, hearing whispers of a nurse who'd saved a child from a wolf and turned her reward into a miracle. News reporters tried to interview her. She politely declined. She didn't want fame. She wanted impact. Then, one golden afternoon in early fall, the clinic door opened, and in walked Mia. 10 years old now, her hair longer, her cheeks rounder, but those same sparkling eyes, so full of life. She ran straight into Kate's arms, hugging her with the force of a child who never forgot. "I missed you," Mia said. "I missed you too," Kate whispered. Behind her stood Clara and Jonathan Wells, their smiles as warm as ever. "We were driving through," Clara said. Mia wanted to stop. Kate knelt down. "How's school?" "Good. I'm writing a story about a brave nurse," Mia grinned. Kate laughed. "Let me know if I know her." "You do," Mia beamed. "She's you." Later, after a short tour of the clinic and a shared cup of tea, the Wells family said their goodbyes. Before leaving, Jonathan pulled Kate aside. "You changed more than our lives," he said. "You changed this whole town." "I didn't do it alone," she said. "No," he agreed. "But only you would have thought to." As the Wells car disappeared down the hill, Kate stood outside the clinic, arms crossed against the breeze, heart full. Around her, the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the building she had built, the life she had reimagined. Inside, a young mother cradled a newborn. A teenager nervously waited for his first checkup. An old man sipped water while filling out his forms. Every life inside those walls was touched by a single moment, a scream in the forest, and one woman who ran toward it. If you enjoyed this story about Nurse Kate Dawson, the 10-year-old girl Mia, and her grateful parents Clara and Jonathan Wells, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful and emotional real-life stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think about how everything unfolded? What would you have done in Kate's position? And how do you feel about the gift she received and what she chose to do with it? Rate the story on a scale of 1 to 10 in the comments below. Be honest. We love hearing from you. Also, let us know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach around the world. Your support helps keep these true, inspiring narratives alive. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay kind and stay curious.